Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, Intelligent Accounts Payable Automation with K2 in rapidMATION. Just a few things before we get started here. You can adjust the screen resolution down to your left there. You can also adjust the volume, and there's also a chat box there for you to submit any questions that you might have. We'll try to address all of the questions today at the end of the webinar. If for some reason we weren't able to get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up via email. With that being said, I want to introduce you to Ayel Inbar, VP of Tech Alliances here at K2, and Sean Lysigane from rapidMATION here to talk about the joint solution with Intelligent Accounts Payable on K2 and rapidMATION. And with that, Ayel.
Thank you, Jira. Welcome, everyone. Super happy to be here with you with another webinar of Solution Showcase. And for those of you that are new to K2, K2 is a low-code process automation platform. We allow you to build applications, process-based applications with little or no code, which means basically that even if you're not a developer or if you work with your business people, your IT people can help in the process of building applications and with digital transformation. We have customers that are running few very critical solutions on top of the K2 platform, and we have customers that basically running their entire organization or all of their processes, hundreds and sometimes more than 1,000 processes on the K2 platform. To build this solution, basically, the main value of building this solution is the time to market. You can build solutions a lot faster. And some of our partners are building solutions on top of K2 that are pre-built, so you can leverage the IP. So if we have a partner, for example, that built a solution for employee onboarding and invested a lot in understanding all of the processes and the workflows, you can leverage that IP to deploy a solution much faster than if you had to go and think about those workflows and build all of this by yourself. We recently introduced K2 Solution Showcase. So if you haven't done so, I would encourage you to go and check it out. We have more than 20 solutions on the site, and we are adding new solutions on a weekly basis. One of the biggest area of investment for K2 over the past 12 months is IPA, in intelligent process automation. And the key difference between process automation and intelligent process automation is the ability to make those processes much smarter. So not only you can go and take manual process and quickly develop and automate them with a K2 low-code platform, you can really now think about how to improve those processes and make them smarter so your processes will be more efficient and you can increase the productivity in your organization. We do that with an integration. We built an integration and invested in the integration with some of the leading vendors in the automation space, with RPA vendors and with AI providers. And when you bring all of that to your process, as I said, you can really run now smarter processes and drive efficiency in your organization. From the customers that are using, we have quite a few customers that are using the platform in that context with different RPA vendors and AI, including AI capabilities. We've seen amazing results. We've seen return on investment like we have never seen before, 200 and 300% return on investment in the first year. And one of the leading partners in this is rapidMATION. And so I'm excited to have Sean from rapidMATION that can talk today about some of the investment that they have made in the area, the solution that they build, and the results from the customers that implemented it. Sean?
Great, thanks very much for the introduction, Neil. Much appreciated. By way of introduction, my name's Sean. I head up the team here at rapidMATION, who are a K2 partner, and I look forward to spending the next little while with you talking about our intelligent accounts payable solution built on top of the K2 platform. Now, just a bit about rapidMATION. We focus on intelligent automation solutions, and really our mojo is about automating processes that involve both humans and software bots. As you'll see from the slide, we focus on 4 specific areas. The first of those areas is digital process automation, or sometimes referred to as human-centric workflow with digital forms, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, and we do a number of different chatbots for customers that we work with. Now, in order to actually put together solutions that involve one or more of these technologies, we need to partner with some of the best-in-breed vendors out there in the market. And when we looked around, we decided to focus on these 4 vendors, and these are the only vendors that we use to weave together these intelligent automation solutions. The first partner we have is Abby, and Abby is all about content or process intelligence. K2, on the other hand, is about digital process automation or business process management. Microsoft we use for a lot of their artificial intelligence capabilities, and UiPath is a robotic process automation tool. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Abby, Abby is very well known in the marketplace for a product called FlexiCapture, which allows them to extract data from unstructured documents like invoices. So for example, if an invoice comes into an organization and I need to be able to retrieve the different line items from that specific invoice, Abby is a great tool that will allow me to do the OCR or optical character recognition on that specific document. But Abby is not just limited to that. Abby has a plethora of different features and functionalities that allows it to extract data from a variety of different unstructured documents. Another great part of the Abby platform that I love around their process intelligence is a company that they've recently acquired called Timeline PI. Now, Timeline PI is a great process intelligence tool that allows me to see what's happening inside each of my processes. And I'm going to take you through a bit of an example a bit later of how we use this tool at the beginning of a process that we were actually automating for a customer. Next up is K2, and for any of you that may not be familiar with K2, K2 is all about digital process automation or business process management, and K2 really allows us to build apps that connect people, processes, and data. Inside the K2 platform, there's 4 tenants. It's all about creating digital forms using the K2 Smart Forms product. And in those forms, you can actually bring in a variety of different pieces of data using their patented piece of technology called Smart Objects. And once you have those forms, you can create enterprise-grade workflow by looping in a number of different humans into the loop in these different workflow processes. The final part of the platform is an analytics platform that allows you to see who did what, when, how, and why, and obviously with the goal being to be able to identify bottlenecks and evolve that process to make it the most efficient process for the organization. Now, it should be said that K2 is a great human workflow tool, and this provides humans with a set of tasks in business processes that they may need to complete. On the other side of that, there's a tool called UiPath, and UiPath is a robotic process automation platform. This is a great article or advert from the WSJ publication, and really I love this because it actually goes through and tells us a bit about UiPath, and it says, "Hello, we're UiPath. We make robots so people don't have to be robots." So for any of you who may not be familiar with robotic process automation, a robotic process automation robot allows us to perform clicks on a screen as you and I as humans would do. So a good example of that is perhaps I have an Excel spreadsheet with 1,000 records in it, and I need to get some of that data into SAP. Instead of me having to manually go through and copy and paste that data, I can build a software robot that loops through that spreadsheet, opens up SAP, and writes all of that data into SAP. So it's really about automating those mundane, repetitive tasks that us as humans can do, but it's not something that we want to tie up our time in doing. Now, really being able to solve an accounts payable specific problem, there's many, I guess, solutions out there in the market, but really if you look at this problem in detail, it's really hard to solve this problem end to end without weaving together one or more of the aforementioned technologies I spoke about. So when we looked at this accounts payable problem, we did a lot of research out in the market about who was offering what, and we really believe we've come up with a unique solution that combines best of breed technologies from a variety of different companies to solve this problem end to end. And obviously, if we can solve this problem end to end, we can resolve some of the lost funds as well as slow and inconsistent invoice processing. And obviously, all of that costs a business a huge amount of time and money. And in order for companies to find an intelligent solution to do this, they need to obviously weave together one or more of these technologies. So the solution that we've put together involves three of the technologies that I spoke about. Firstly, the ABI system, which gives us the document capture and optical character recognition part of the solution. Secondly, we use K2's low-code application development platform that allows us to create digital forms and loop humans into this workflow process. And finally, we bring in UiPath and the Robotic process automation platform to do some of these mundane, repetitive tasks that we don't want to do. And in so doing, what we do is we've created a joint solution that provides an intelligent accounts payable automation that allows you to save time and reduce costs. Now, the great thing about the solution is you can use it out of the box, or you can customize it to your specific environment. And that allows you to run your accounts payable process your way. So what I mean by that is you think about it as a big box of Lego with K2 and UiPath, and you can configure these different pieces of Lego to build a solution or an intelligent automation solution to run exactly the way your business runs. So while we have an accelerator where you can use the solution as is, we can customize any part of the solution to fit your exact business needs. All right, well, let's go have a look at this and see what this looks like in action. So I'm going to demonstrate this to you today by way of a customer example. The first thing is we were working with a customer who knew that they needed to automate their accounts payable process, but they weren't really sure of where they should start. So this is where a tool like ABI Timeline PI really comes into the forefront. Now, if you have three pieces of data, those being a date timestamp, the second piece being a name of a workflow step, so for example, invoice received, invoice paid, or invoice completed, or something like that. And the third part would be some sort of unique identifier for a process. And in the invoice scenario, that would be either an invoice ID or a quote ID or a purchase order number, or even if it was a different process, it could be an email address or something similar. Now, you could gather this data automatically from any manual processes that you already have in place, or you could grab log files from systems where parts or all of this process is already automated. But in our specific scenario, this process was all manual to start. So what we did is we compiled a spreadsheet with a huge amount of data that we managed to gather from a variety of different systems that gave us some insight into what was happening in this accounts payable process. And the results are up in front of the screen for you. And really what this does is it shows you firstly a big summary of all of the different data that Timeline PI has analyzed. And it tells you about the different events that are in the process, how many events have been loaded, and how many different timelines there actually have been, which go up and down against each line item of this process, right? So once I actually go to a separate report inside Timeline PI, what you can see here is on the left-hand side, it's given me all of the various steps or paths of the process. And then I can actually see how often each of these paths may happen. So the gray highlighted area there shows me that 43% of the time I actually follow these steps in the process, and it works its way in that order, in that sequential order. As I go further down to the right-hand side, you'll see there might be some exceptions or where I might bounce back from one area to another. But really, this is like process gold for me, because what I can do with the Timeline PI tool is I can assign costs with each of these steps in the workflow process. And this gives me a great place to start, or where I should actually start automating my accounts payable process. So if I were to look at this, I could see that if I were to automate that gray highlighted area, that would allow me to automate approximately 43% of all of the incoming invoices in this specific process. So it's a really great way to focus on areas that would provide us the best bang for our buck. Now, another great visualization that Timeline PI actually gives us is if I push play on this automation, you'll see a number of little green, amber, and red dots going through a different of the process flows. Now, you can immediately see that there's a more common part of the process where a lot of data is flowing through, and you'll notice some of the red dots or the amber dots where things start to get a bit of a bottleneck. Now, what this allows me to see is straight away I can see which parts of the process are slow or not, and perhaps this allows me to go and actually focus on these specific areas to evolve the process and make it a lot better. So back to our specific scenario, we use this tool to gather some information on where we should actually start automating this accounts payable process. So what we did is we started off with an invoice. And the nirvana of invoices and tools that do optical character recognition is around multiple line items in a specific invoice. So here's an invoice we used for some of the testing. This invoice comes in. You'll see it's got a pretty complex structure with a number of different columns in it and a few line items in it. And what we wanted to do is our solution immediately, it monitors an email inbox. For example, something like accounts payable at rapidMATION.com. And what's happening is a piece of software is just sitting there monitoring that email inbox and waiting for a new invoice to arrive. So on screen, you'll see the invoices come in. It's got an invoice number with it. And what's happened is as soon as this invoice has actually come into that email inbox, Abby in this scenario is sitting and waiting for new invoices to come in. So Abby picks up that a new invoice has arrived, and what this does is it takes us into a screen inside Abby where I can see all of the different batches of invoices that may have arrived at a certain period of time. Now, this is involving a human user into this process to firstly be able to see all of these invoices come in and make sure that Abby has extracted all of the information in a relevant way. So you'll see in the red highlighted area, that's a new batch that's actually come into Abby. And if I actually click and open up that batch, what Abby's already done for me is it's gone through and it's classified what type of document has come into that email inbox. Now you'll see there that it's got two kind of line items there. The first line item says invoice because Abby is intelligent enough to know what an invoice may look like and distinguish that from different types of documents because perhaps if it wasn't an invoice that came in, we may want to redirect that document somewhere else. In this scenario, it's pretty easy because it's 98% certain that it's an invoice. It goes down and it discovers each of the pages of the invoice, and the line item in 1.1 shows you that it's only one page. Should there have been more pages in that invoice, it would have gone through and shown you 1.2, 1.3, and so on and so forth. Now the human user can actually come in now and they can double click on that specific invoice, and what that does, it opens up a screen for a user to be able to see firstly the invoice on the right hand side, and secondly, all the data that Abby has automatically managed to extract from the invoice. So it's really put it through some of its artificial intelligence and some of its OCR capability. It's identified various parts inside the invoice, and it's actually extracted all that data and it's shown it to me on the left-hand side in the screen. Now what you'll notice is there's a few items in red, and what this is doing is it's highlighting to me and Abby saying to me, hey Sean, I believe I've got this right, but you may just want to cast an eye on some of these numbers or letters just to make sure I manage to get this extraction right. And what I could do is I could always go through and update any of the items on the left hand side should they not be correct, or should Abby not have managed to extract it correctly. Now the great thing about Abby is down on the bottom left hand side, you'll see that there's been a number of warnings that have popped up to me. Now Abby, you can build in a number of different rules into these incoming invoices to check fields, do lookups, a variety of different things. But on this scenario, it's just giving me a few warnings to say, hey, the invoice date is older than 6 weeks, or there's no purchase order number associated with 317002 in the purchase order set. But it's really just allowing me to configure rules that I can put together for invoices that are coming into my organization. Now the great thing about Abby is they've built in, over their years and years of experience in the invoice market, what they've managed to do is pick up data from a large array of different invoices. But there's always going to be some invoices that may come in a different format that Abby may not have seen before. And the really great thing about Abby FlexiCapture is you can go through and train Abby to understand new types of invoice patterns. And what you can do is on the right hand side, you can click on a specific piece of text or an area inside an invoice, and Abby has a whole learning model behind it that allows it to say next time that invoice comes in, it can pick up that pattern and it can automatically extract the data, which is really something great that Abby allows us to do. Now, once we've validated that all of the information is extracted correctly from the invoice, the first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to push this across into the human workflow world. Because generally, once an invoice has come in and we've validated that the data is correct, we want to route this around inside our organization to see if we are happy to pay this invoice or not. The other thing that we need to do is the person that's actually submitted this invoice to the company, what we want to do is we want to send them an invoice received notification to let them know that we've actually received their invoice and that the invoice will be processed shortly. So what we've done in this scenario is we weave together the worlds of Abby and K2. As a reminder, K2 is our digital process automation platform, and Abby has passed this data off onto K2 and started a K2 workflow process. The first part of that workflow process is we have sent an email back to the person who submitted this invoice to say, hey Sean, that invoice that you submitted for payment has been received and will be processed shortly. The next thing that we're going to do though is we're going to go through and we're going to assign a task to someone internal in this organization to tell them that they need to go through and review the invoice and the details we've extracted from this invoice and either approve or decline this invoice. So in this email, you'll see we've already taken some of the details from that invoice that Abby's extracted, and we've provided this user a link to the specific task where they need to go through and review this invoice and decide if it should be approved or declined. The next screen you'll see here is actually something called the K2 Workspace. And the K2 Workspace is an area inside K2 where I can configure for a specific process. So in this scenario, this is an accounts payable workspace, and someone who may be responsible for approving or declining these incoming invoices, they have the ability, firstly, to see a task list of all of the new invoices that have come in and ones that they are responsible for as a human to either approve or decline. Now, the great thing about having a human workflow engine is once I assign a task to a human, I can do a number of different things with that task. As an example, if the user forgets to approve that task, then I can actually nudge them and remind them to go and actually approve or decline it. And should they not do it after a second nudge, I could perhaps pick up that task and redirect it to someone else who can then go and either approve or decline it. Built into an engine like K2 is some great features and functionality like out of office. So perhaps if I'm on a nice holiday and I'm the person normally responsible for approving or declining invoices, I can redirect all my tasks to someone else while I am out of the office. So once I do that, I can open up that task, and what that does, it opens up a K2 smart form, and on the left hand side you'll see the invoice that we've already scanned through Abby. But what you'll notice on the right hand side is K2 already has all of those great details that Abby has managed to extract from the invoice. So I can see things like payment details, I can see things like invoice amounts, all of those nice things that Abby has already managed to extract for me. And what I can do is I can come through and I can now go through and verify this specific invoice to say that it has been verified, and we can then go through and submit that through a number of different approval levels inside the K2 platform. So once I submit that off, that then moves on to the next stage of the workflow process, where a user now gets another chance to either approve or decline the specific invoice. And in this scenario, what I can do here is they again receive an email notification to let them know that they have a new task on their task list. And another great feature of K2 that I'd like to point out is you can see there that in this email, there's a line item that says you can action this task from your work list here, or alternatively reply to this email with one of the following, and that could be with approve or reject. This is a great feature called K2 Smart Actions, and should I be out on the move and I don't want this invoice to get held up, I can simply just reply back to this email with either approve or reject, and this will move this invoice on through the workflow process. A really great feature from K2 that allows me to easily action these tasks on the go. Now, what I want to do is when I get to this next level of approval, we may have actually picked up a purchase order on this specific invoice. And a purchase order, when we're going through and actually approving this invoice, we want to make sure that the purchase order that was created for this invoice actually matches the invoice amount that's come through. Now, in this specific scenario, this customer used SAP to manage all of their purchase orders. But the problem they had is that SAP and the API layer that was available in SAP was going to be very expensive for them to actually expose for K2 to be able to automatically do the purchase order lookup. It should be pointed out that if that API layer was available, K2 has a great piece of technology. It's actually a patented piece of technology called K2 Smart Objects that allows K2 to go and fetch data from a variety of different backend systems through an API layer. Now, because that wasn't available, what we decided to do here was we decided to introduce UiPath, or that robotic process automation platform, and we decided to start a UiPath software bot off that would go away and automatically log into SAP, search for that specific purchase order number, and then actually retrieve all of those purchase order details and pass that back to K2 so that the user who was either approving or declining this invoice could immediately see in that K2 smart form what the details of the purchase order was. A really, really great way to weave together the worlds of both humans and software bots, allow them to work together, let the UiPath software bot take care of the mundane, repetitive task, and empower that human user to do what they do best, those higher value tasks. So once that UiPath bot had got the details of the purchase order, we assigned that task to a human user. On the right-hand side, you can see all of the details of the purchase order have been given back to K2. So the human user now just reviews the invoice, reviews all the details around it, and at the top, they get an instruction. And in this case, it says, please review the below invoice and ensure that the extracted data is correct. And then once reviewed, please either approve or reject the invoice. So in this scenario, the user can fill in a comment. And in this scenario, they were happy that the invoice was all good to be paid. So they could go through and select approve. Now inside our standard accounts payable demo and our base solution, we have multiple levels of approval. So you could say if an invoice, for example, is over $5,000, send it to a second level of approval. Or perhaps if it's over $50,000, send it to the CFO for approval. Or you can have some very complex human workflow routing scenarios, which K2 gives us the ability to do using their enterprise-grade workflow system. In this scenario, it's pretty simple. We'll just push approve on this invoice. And what happens once this invoice has been approved, we send back a notification to the company that had submitted this invoice. We tell them the invoice has been approved. We tell them that the invoice will be processed on the due date. Of course, us being finance professionals, we never want to pay an invoice before it's due, so we can keep the cash and obviously use that cash wisely. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell this person that submitted the invoice that the invoice will be processed on the due date, which in this scenario was the 11th of September. And in the email, we've also included any comments that the approver may have put in there. So now what happens is now that the invoice is approved, you'll see that it drops this invoice onto an upcoming invoices tab. Now this is again a nice K2 smart form that gives us full visibility into any of the invoices that are actually coming up for payments. I can search and filter these. I can sort by supplier names or status or amounts. There's a variety of different things that I can do here, but this invoice will now sit and wait there until the 11th of September comes up. And once the 11th of September comes up, what we want to do is we want to go through and make the payment for this specific invoice. Now what we did here is we did something that was really interesting. In this specific customer scenario, they were processing a huge amount of these invoices on a daily basis. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to automatically make payments for some of these invoices should an invoice fit a number of different parameters. So what we did is we decided to build a UiPath software bot that once this due date came up for the invoice, this UiPath software bot would just be running and waiting for those due dates to come up. And when that due date came up, what we wanted to do was this UiPath software bot would kick off and it would automatically log into internet banking and make the payment for this specific invoice. Now, I'm fully aware that this is not something that everyone may feel comfortable with. In this specific scenario, they put in a number of safeguards around their internet banking policies, what a bot could actually do, a maximum amount, all of those things. But because they were doing such high volumes of these invoice payments, this made perfect sense for them to be able to automate some of the payments of these invoices and automate some of these mundane repetitive tasks. So normally this would just happen in the background, but let me show you a little video of what this actually looks like. So here I'm going to kick off that accounts payable bot, and this is the software bot logging into internet banking. You'll notice my cursor is staying still on the right hand side of the screen, and this is a software bot logging in using personal access numbers and passwords, browsing to a specific account inside my internet banking, filling in all the details that Abby managed to extract from the payment of the invoice, and then going through and automatically making the payment for that specific invoice. So in that scenario, it was a really great way to take care of some of that repetitive, mundane tasks that was tying up a lot of humans' time. What happens then is once that invoice was paid, the UiPath software bot notified K2 and it marked that invoice as paid inside K2. And you'll notice that this invoice now has moved from the upcoming invoices tab across to the paid invoices tab. And now again, I have full visibility into which invoices have automatically been paid. And I can go through and see exactly which happened or which invoice was paid when and by who. A really, really great scenario just to showcase the capabilities of a few different sets of technologies coming together. So just in summary, what you saw there is we started off with a tool called Timeline PI, which provided us the process analysis, and it analyzed the different process paths of the accounts payable process. What that allowed us to do is see which parts of the process we were going to automate or where we were going to start the automations. The next part is we used Abby, which is that Flexi Capture for Invoices tool that allowed us to do a few different things on that invoice. The first thing it allowed us to do was monitor the email inbox and import those invoices as soon as they came in. The next thing it did, it recognized that invoice and it classified it. So it told us which type of document it actually was. And then it allowed a human user to go through and verify and make sure that Abby had managed to extract all the details from that specific invoice. Once that had all been verified, we then exported that data for that invoice. And what we did is we started off a K2 based process. And K2, as a reminder, gives us that advanced human-centric workflow in digital forms, and that handled the full multi-level of approval flow for that invoices and all of the approvals around it. Then what we did is we weaved in UiPath that automated all of those mundane and repetitive tasks for us. And UiPath did two things. Firstly, it logged into SAP and looked up the purchase order data from SAP, provided that back to K2 so that K2 could show that human user the digital form with all of the PO details. And finally, once that invoice was actually approved inside K2, it went through and it performed the clicks on a screen to make the internet banking payment for the invoice. And in so doing, that was a great way to weave together an end-to-end intelligent automation solution, and in this case, an intelligent accounts payable solution that weaved together the worlds of both humans and software bots. The software bots took care of those repetitive, mundane tasks, and humans were freed up their time to do more of some of those higher value tasks. Now, many people ask, well, why should I go through and actually automate my accounts payable process? Again, there's a plethora of stats out there that tell you different reasons why you should go and do it. And I've pulled out just a few here to tell you a bit about what people are seeing out there in the market. So in this scenario, AP automation has reduced costs with many organizations by 50% and in some cases by 80%. So you can imagine the human cost involved in manually reviewing a number of these invoices. And this stat is telling us that between 50 and 80% of that, or those costs of that, could actually be reduced by automating this scenario. It also helps us with invoice routing and approval times, and in some instances this can be reduced by 80 or 90%, which in so doing results in lower costs, fewer late fees and penalties, and obviously provides better interaction with your suppliers because they're getting paid on time, and there's not always this continual chase up to see exactly where the invoice is and when it's going to get paid. In another scenario, invoice exceptions are 43% less with an accounts payable automation solution. So you can imagine if this process was all manual, you could have fat finger syndrome where we might pay the wrong amounts or the wrong details are keyed in, but invoice exceptions can be 43% less with an automated accounts payable solution. Nearly 62% of invoice processing costs are made up of staff labor. And again, some of those tools and technologies that I showed you, they're all there to minimize the interaction that humans may need to have with these types of scenarios. And again, it should be very key to know that humans will never be eradicated from these scenarios, because us as humans, we provide things like emotional intelligence and foresight and creativity and all the things that are needed which are vital to this process. But what some of this automation is doing, it's taking care of that mundane, repetitive stuff. It's bringing us all that information into one screen so we can easily make the decisions and action those tasks accordingly based off of the information that we see. If you wanted to watch one of these intelligent accounts payable solutions in action, what we've done is we've actually posted a video onto the rapidMATION blog. So you'll see the URL down the bottom there, and you can go through and see how K2 and UiPath have been used for an invoice processing scenario. The next thing that we've done is we've actually published out some of these solution artifacts because it's such a common pain point that many customers have. And I should note, as I said right in the beginning, is while we have a base solution for this, it should be noted that you can actually take our base solution and customize any of the artifacts to build this solution to fit your exact company and needs. And that's because K2 and UiPath are both like big boxes of Lego, where I can take those Lego bricks and I can go and build this process in the exact way that my company works. Should you want to go check out more about our intelligent accounts payable automation, head over to the K2 Solution Showcase. There's heaps of great solutions on there, and you can find out some more details about the K2 and rapidMATION solution. We've also created some thought leadership around this space based off some of the learnings and the many customers that we've helped out with some of their accounts payable challenges. And I'd encourage you to go read some of these blogs. There's a couple here that I'll point out. The first one is entitled At Last, an Intelligent Solution to Accounts Payable Challenges. And again, I've included the URL at the bottom of the page there. And the second blog post in that series is actually An Intelligent Way to Prevent Accounts Payable Fraud. And this is all talking about three-way matching and how we can use a combination of things like K2 and UiPath and Abby to handle some of the fraud we're seeing out there in the market today. So I encourage you to go and actually read that too. All right, with that said, it's really been a great session. I really thank you for your time today. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and open it up to some questions. So Jira, over to you. Let me see if you've got any questions on your side.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Yes, we'll move into our question and answer session that we have here. We do have a few questions for you, Sean. And just a reminder to the audience, if you do have a question, please submit your question through the chat box down below, and we'll get those questions answered for you. So, Sean, the first one that we have here is, in the example shown, Abby was monitoring an email inbox. Are there any other ways Abby can pick up new incoming invoices?
The answer is yes, and that's a great question. Abby has a multitude of different ways that it can monitor and pick up new incoming invoices. Potentially, if you have some flatbed scanners, Abby can obviously monitor flatbed scanners to pick up and see new invoices that come into the organization. It can also monitor things like file shares. There's a multitude of different ways it can do it. And again, bear in mind that if you had to use this solution in combination with UiPath, UiPath then could monitor even a number of other ways, like secure FTP or FTP sites, and then pass that invoice on to Abby for processing and extraction.
Great, thanks. All right, and the second question here is, does the OCR solution support line item capture, or does it just capture invoice header and footer data?
Again, another great question, and Abby is a best-in-breed OCR solution. It can extract all details from an invoice. That could be the header and footer data, including individual line items or multitude of line items, and it's seen as best-of-breed in this OCR space, and that's why it can do all of that extraction.
Okay, great, thanks. And here we have one that's around BPM. If I want to implement additional business process management application areas beyond accounts payable, can I?
Yeah, really good question too, and we get often asked that. The great news is that once you implement the K2 platform, you now have a best-of-breed digital process automation platform, and while you might use it to automate accounts payable, you can extend that into any processes inside your organization. So often customers move on to expense claims or employee onboarding or customer onboarding, or many other processes that they would like to automate inside their business.
All right, and the one that we have here is in regards to an EPR system. Can the solution integrate with an ERP system and push the approved invoice data into an ERP system?
Yes, another really great question. So the answer to that is twofold. So number one, K2 has a number of out-of-the-box connectors into a variety of different ERP systems, and that's via its patented piece of technology called Smart Objects. So if there's a system that has API access, K2 is really great with easily being able to integrate with that system and push data via that API layer directly into that ERP system. Bear in mind that also if there is no API available, or perhaps it's a legacy system, what you can do is you can use UiPath to do the clicks that you and I as humans would do on the screen to push that data into that specific ERP system. We've actually implemented solutions using both of those approaches, and it really just depends on what is available from the ERP system.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. And we have time for one more question here. Does the solution allow me to approve invoices on a mobile, tablet, or desktop device?
Yes, the great news is K2 Smart Forms, you build a form once and that form can automatically render itself across mobile, tablet and desktop. You can even go as far as install the K2 mobile app, which allows you to approve these things directly off a mobile app. It obviously then gives you push notifications, and even if you wanted to push K2 Smart Forms onto your mobile device, it even supports offline connectivity, which is really great in certain scenarios. Excellent, some great questions there. Thank you very much for those. We're not going to have enough time to get through all of those questions, but we'll make sure we go through and answer all of those through the Q&A manager. But really what I want to do is thank you very much for your time. And as always, if we can provide you some more details on what you've seen today, please feel free to drop me an email. My email address is Sean, that's SHAUN @rapidMATION.com, or head over to our website, rapidMATION.com, and you can find some more details about our intelligent accounts payable solution and many more solutions that we have on offer. Thank you once again, and we'll speak soon. Bye-bye.